interesting I'd like us to go through. But as usual, I like doing a recap of what we covered last time. So last week, we started by looking at the history of money. And the key thing about this is that, you know why data has become so powerful? It's because the more data you have about anything, the way nature works, it's like there's a cycle that goes on and on. So if you're starting at a certain point and you do not know any history about anything or that particular thing that you probably want to learn, then it means you're just starting from that point moving forward. Now, what the world has come to realize is that everything in history has a momentum or a cycle. Therefore, if you can work backwards, you can be able to trace the movements. And once you're able to trace those movements, it becomes easy for you to predict what you anticipate into the future. So the more data you have, the better you are. And this is so true, specifically with regards to what we term as cash flowing assets. So one of those cash flowing assets, we'll be looking at that in a couple of weeks. We're looking at investments. If you think about the investments, if you want to go and put your money into the stock market, if you can be able to get data in the history of the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and you get someone who can actually draw for you a graph of how it has been oscillating, you will realize that there's always a repeated trend about that. And once you get to understand the history about that trend, then it becomes very easy for you to predict. When I introduced myself, I told you one of the degrees that I have is in actuarial mathematics. So when I was studying this in 2000, data science had not become something big. But basically, what they call data science is what we used to learn back then when I was studying that course. Ask yourself, how is it that the insurance companies are able to price their products for you and they're able to make money out of that? How do they arrive at that pricing, whether it's a general insurance or life insurance? So it's all about collecting data. When you study the behavior of the past, it gives you a big upper hand in trying to predict where the future is going. So as technology kept expanding and blowing up, people started understanding the power of having the past data. That's why data has actually blown up to a point whereby it has become more valuable than oil at present day. So the most valuable commodity that exists in this world today is not even oil, it's actually data. That is why sometimes, you find yourself, you're dry in terms of liquidity, and you realize Safaricom through the M-Pesas and M-Shwari, they start even limiting the things they used to give you. The moment you start becoming liquid, they start offering you more products. How do they realize whether you're dry in terms of liquidity or whether you're actually gearing up in terms of liquidity? The reason they're able to see that is because they have your data since you joined them. So data has become so powerful. So the reason why I took you through the history of money is because I wanted to bring a different perspective from how we were taught in schools. In schools, we're just being taught to pass. But here you want to understand how money became what we know it, how it started, how it evolved. And as you start seeing that evolution of it from what we learned last time, you can see the trend. And that's why at the end of it, I asked you, do you expect it to end where it has ended? So we started with barter trade, then we moved to gold or precious metals, and then they were chipped around to create small pieces, which was the genesis of what we call coins. So back then they referred them as metal coins. And then out of those metal coins, some people walked in between those who were interested in buying and those who were interested in selling. And that's where the brokerage idea came from. And they started writing these notes to guarantee that none of the parties is going to default. So those papers were called IOU, IOU. And that paper called IOU, as small as this one, that became the genesis of what we know as the paper money today, right? So the notes we hold today, that was the genesis of it. So after paper money came what we call the plastic money, or the plastic cards, the Visas, the MasterCards, and so forth. Then from there, we moved on to electronic. So you can move your money from one bank to someone else's bank account by just keying the passwords and blah, 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 all those stuff. So that's electronic transfer, M-Pesa, fintechs, all these things, that's what we refer to as electronic money. Then something else occurred around 2009. And this one, I'll give you an example showing you how much of what has been happening in the past, the government has always been in control through what we know as the central bank. So some people were not happy. They just did not like the concept that the government could print money whenever they feel like. And we, as the citizens, have to work to get that money which they're just printing at their will. And so to fight the system, they tried to come up with the way of how they could create a system whereby, or come up with something that could serve as money and the government will not have control over it. That was the genesis of what you know today as the cryptocurrency. So that is the evolution of money. So when you study all these things, there's an interesting trend you'll realize. Every time a new concept or evolution of money comes in, a lot of people pull behind. They do not accept that. And that goes back to the psychology of what we learned in the first few lessons, because we're so accustomed to doing what we're so used to. We don't like trying new things. We don't like being proactive. And so the few risk takers who like trying new ideas always make quick money from that. And you can see what happened with Bitcoin, for instance. So that kind of knowledge helps you such that when the next evolution starts to come up, you can recall this lesson I was giving you, reflect back, and if you had some liquid money somewhere, you can tap into that to ride on that wave before everyone else started realizing like, wow, this is happening, it's been accepted. So when the mob comes in by that time, you can make quite some good money out of that. So that's the first thing we looked at. And then we went ahead and looked at banks. So I gave you the history of bank came from those people we call in brokers who are standing between sellers and buyers. But as now time went by, they started realizing that there are people who want to buy certain things and they couldn't get money. So they started offering now credit to those people. That is how bank became what we know it today. So bank is basically a broker between people we call savers and borrowers. So savers bring money to the bank for safekeeping, and then borrowers come to borrow that money from the bank to go do whatever it is they want to do with it. They pay back with some interest. The bank takes the interest that is paid with the borrower and pays some small interest, if any, to the savers. So basically, when you're placing your money in the bank, that money is not working for you. When you're saving money, it is not working for you. You're placing it there for safekeeping. And I said, if you want to put money in the bank, if your interest is to have your money in a safe place, then go ahead and place it in the bank. But if you want to make money, if you want your money to work for you, putting it in the bank will never do that. So savers, through, again, the condition of the mind, through the subconscious mind, they decided to create this financial literacy as you know it, and they made sure through all the teachings, they will always be pushing the concept of saving, saving, saving. You will never be wealthy through savings. You'll never experience financial freedom through savings. That's a fact. And I know it sounds strange because that's what you've had since you're small. But I keep asking you, show me one millionaire who you know who got there through savings. Just one. What do they talk about? They talk about investments. Investments is one of the cash flowing assets because it generates money for you at a regular interval. So when you listen to these wealthy people, the millionaires, the people who aspire to reach their status, pay attention to them because they are living that. How many people do you know who teach financial literacy are actually rich? Walk into all these companies, even here in Nairobi, who are teaching them, and tell me how many of them are actually financially stable. The truth of the matter is most of them are not, yet they're teaching you this. Why? Because they found it being taught that way, so they're picking the knowledge they got and they're bringing it to you. Just watch them. The late Chris Kirubi, there's no even a single day he ever talked about savings. So we need to open up our eyes and see the reality of what is in front there. Saving will never get you there. But I'm not saying saving is bad. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this. You as a creator, whatever you focus your mind on, you create in your reality. So the whole idea of building up this financial education through push of saving was to make sure that they program your subconscious mind to be savers. Why? So that you just naturally take your money to the banks and they sit there. Remember, I'm not talking about circles. I'm showing you the history. So people start out taking money to the banks. And my money is safe there. I'm going to get some interest. Money is going to work for me. But on the flip side of savers, we have people called borrowers. And there are two types of borrowers, the way we saw it. There are those we call the good borrowers and those we call the bad borrowers. The good borrowers borrow money and place it in cash flowing assets. They make that money work for them. They put that money on assets. The bad borrowers take money from financial institution and spend it on liabilities. And that's why I gave you that example. How is it then you can go borrow money from your circle to go do your wedding? How will that wedding repay that money? That is not financial intelligence. But because you've been pushed to always, if you want to borrow, you're not even realizing what is happening to you. Before you realize it, you've actually dug yourself a deep pit, kutoka inakuwa shida. So these two types of borrowers, what we're trying to do is, and that's why you find a lot of you will tell me, take us through how to get ourselves out of debt. It's because from when you're very young, you're programmed just to spend. Sasa sa leo una pesa, and then an institution comes and offers you money. No one has taught you the difference between good borrowing and bad borrowing. Your mind is just rolling to spend. Because from the moment you're a kid, that's the program which have always run in your subconscious mind. So the moment you borrow this money, you go buy your personal car. That car needs fuel every day. If it spoils, it needs a mechanic. Where are you getting that money from? So financial wisdom, when you're borrowing money, not unless it's an emergency, like sickness, that is not financial wisdom. So borrowing is a very good tool when you know how to use it. And the best way to use it is make sure when you get that money, it goes into a cash flowing asset, because that cash flowing asset is going to generate some income, which then you can use to repay your loan. So we need to be very careful on the decision we make. Remember the two questions I said we should always be asking ourselves. The first one is, who am I as a creator? Who am I? You are analyzing your past. You're looking at the situation, the outcome, the results of your day-to-day, given the situation, and you're asking yourself, who am I? As a creator, I have created this. Am I happy? Why am I in debt? So once you accept that, then we move to the second question, which is, who do I choose to be going forward? I want to get out of debt. I want to be wealthy. So that decision you're going to make going forward, you need to make sure that you stop all those things I've been telling you that do not work for you. Because it's just a setup, it's just a trap for your life. So the good borrowers never even care about money. They just wait for savers to bring money. The good borrowers always focus as creators, the focus is always on ideas of cash flowing assets. They're always looking for opportunities. They don't even focus about money because they know the money is there. So once they get a good idea, now they come to the bank and then they ask for the loan. They take the money, they go implement the idea generates income, they pay back the loan, and eventually that cash flowing asset becomes theirs forever. And then they think of another idea, and so forth and so on. And that is where all of us, that is the whole purpose of this program. At the end of it, we want to start now focusing on the cash flowing assets. That's the first thing. When you're thinking about deni, do you expect yourself to come out of it? As a creator, what are you storing inside here? Is it wealth ama deni? Ni deni. And as long as unafikiria deni, as a creator, that's what you'll keep attracting in your life. So get your minds out of that as much as you're there, because it's about where you're heading, not where you're coming from. So start thinking about cash flowing assets, because the moment you start thinking about that cash flowing assets, the universe or God is going to bring it to you. And once you get it, you'll be able to generate income to pay ile deni ya nyuma. So you cannot be thinking about debt and you expect going forward things are going to change. Utazidi kuingia ndani. As a creator, remember that. So that's the second part. Then we talked about the cash flowing behaviors, which I've just narrated there. So when you look about those three we talked about, someone is going to borrow money and do a wedding. So money in, money out, cash flowing habit one or behavior one. Why? Because since you are a kid, you were programmed. Allow me to just do this writing here. It will be better if I write it down. So we had this. Remember, everything about personal finance breaks down to this diagram here. And this diagram speaks about the three mindsets, these three programs. So initially, when I took you through this, we had what we call the cash flow quadrant here. So here we had E, S, B, and I. So here we are talking about income coming from one of these four. So this time around, because we were talking about borrowing, we said, let's put a bank here, or a Sacco for that matter, or your Sacco for that matter. Okay? So remember, I told you there are two ways of how you can generate income. So we talked about borrowing and savings, money coming from here. That is why your industry is called the corporate savings and credit. So this is credit. See, so credit is just borrowing. That's why you call savings and credit. So you as a creator, where do you want to start? So the problem is, since childhood, you've just been exposed to spending. Imekuwa tabia. Ni kama mtu amezoea kukunywa kabisa. Hata ukimletea changaa, he wouldn't care. Hata umletea kitu na kaji, because it's just something in him. It's a program, he cannot control it. So if you've been raised up and programmed to be a spender, hata ukiomba pesa, the same programs which are running will just automatically happen. So we said the first one, money comes out this way. So you borrow money, it comes in here as income. Here we have expense. Here we have cash flowing assets, and here we have liabilities. So program kama umezoea kutumia pesa itaingia hapa, itakuja tu kama imetoka hapa. This is what I'm saying, you take money to spend it on wedding. How will you pay this back? Mwingine atakuja achukue loan hapa, akuje anunue simu. Simu ianze kutumia credit hapa, aanze kupambana. How will this pay this money back? How can a phone you're using as a personal phone repay itself? It means you have to tap money from somewhere else to pay for this. And the last one, which is where all of us want to go and put it in red, money comes in here, you borrowed from your circle, you come, implement or purchase a cash flowing asset, and this cash flowing asset starts generating some money. So this money, it can come all this way and start paying for this loan here. So you keep repaying until you finish. The moment you finish, this first cash flowing asset one becomes yours. Then you start saving for second one, cash flowing asset two, and so forth. That's how we ended up with that diagram that looked like a pyramid. Remember, I was giving you I was comparing our CEO and our chairman. So we said when you're programmed to be a saver, your wealth grows, perpendicular like this. But when you start focusing on cash flowing assets, it becomes like a pyramid. A point is going to reach where you don't even need to work. Money is just coming from all corners. So it is not about how educated you are. It is not about how professional you are. It all has to do with the mindset, which is which of these programs do you have in you? And by now, all of us should have identified where we are, such that now going forward, we say, this is the direction we're choosing to be. And that's why we're saying, by the end of this program, we are going to create a product that is going to help you. Tushikane mikono sisi wote na tusonge mbele, such that moja kishuka kidogo tunaweza muinua, so that it becomes easier to reprogram the wrong programs in our subconscious. We replace it with this new one, which focuses only on cash flowing asset. And it does not matter how old you are. It always works. You follow other things they're telling you about savings, trust me, you're going to struggle. This is the formula that you should always, always run with. Okay? All right, great. So with that, then we mentioned briefly about the CRB. And the CRB comes to the fact that because from when we're very young, we are always programmed to spend. We do not get the visibility of understanding what borrowing is all about, or these two types of borrowers, which we call the good borrowers and the bad borrowers. So from when you're very small, ukiwa mtoto mdogo, ukiwa shuleni, unaomba kalamu urudishi, you are starting to build a very bad habit huko mbele ya pesa, because it means hata huko ukipewa pesa hautarudisha. I'm sure all of you know people who get loans from SACCOs, wanatumia vibaya, and when they're called, they start getting angry. That was not your money. It was other members' money. Why are you getting angry and you misuse that money? So this kind of education is very important because it empowers you to make rational decisions about your personal finance. It is totally not logical for you to go borrow money for a wedding. It does not make sense for you to borrow money to go for a holiday. That is just, there's no financial wisdom at all at that point. You'll rather take that loan and go set up a chicken farm at your home. Hata kama utaanza na 10. Have a plan of how you're going to grow them from 10 to, let's say, 50 in the next, let's say, 1 or 2 years. Now, that is wisdom, because those chickens, you can sell them. They're going to produce eggs, which you can sell. So we can see, after some time, you'll be expecting some money to be flowing in. That's a cash flowing asset. But when you take money and you're going to abroad, you'll have fun for a week. Then you come back, you struggle for the rest 1 year. Alafu unakuja kupiga kelele hapo umelemewa na deni. it's lack of that knowledge. That's what the Bible is telling us. My people perish for lack of right knowledge, not just knowledge, but the right knowledge. Okay, so that's what we covered last time. Today, please allow me to start off with a story about these three neighbors you can see on your screen. And basically, I'd really like to get some of your views. So when I ask questions, please, those of you can manage, just write on the chat. I'll be asking quite a lot of questions today because I want to engage your minds until you get to realize where I'm going with this one. Okay, great. Now, this story goes like this. In this estate, let me rub this. Please follow up. Stay with me because the lesson I'm bringing right now is going to guide you. You're going to understand even why that product we're saying we're going to build is extremely powerful. Okay? So we have this estate here, and this is the entrance and the exit. Okay? Now, three neighbors walk out every single day, and I'm going to describe what happens to each one of them. So here, we have who we call neighbor number one. Here, we have a neighbor we call neighbor number two. And here, we have a neighbor we call neighbor number three. Now, the characteristics or the habits of neighbor number one is this. He does not know where he is going. Hajui kule anaenda. So what does he do? He wakes up in the morning and then anazurura tu. He just walks. He walks. In the evening anasikia amechoka, anaamua kurudi nyumbani. Na wote wametoka wamevaa suti similar. Okay? The second day anazurura tu hivyo akichoka anarudi. That's how he lives his life. Monday to Friday, rest on the weekend, the next Monday to Friday, January to December. 1 year after the other, hivyo tu. So the question I want to ask you, please write on the chart. Do you expect neighbor number one to reach anywhere? That's the question. If not, why? If so, why? Do you expect this neighbor to reach anywhere? Anyone on the chart, please? Hajui kule anaenda. Yanatoka tunazurura. Do you expect him to reach anywhere? I see a couple. No, because they have no sense of direction. Brilliant. No. Thank you, Eunice, and thank you, Robert. So that is true. So we say we do not expect this guy to ever reach anywhere. Okay? Great. Now let's go to neighbor number two. Neighbor number two knows where he wants to go. Okay? That's number one. Then two, but does not know how to get there. So he knows he wants to go somewhere. I want to go to Rwanda. But he does not know how to get there. So what does he do? The first day, he decides, when I come out of this estate, I will go left. So anazurura left, anaenda, akichoka anarudi nyumbani. The next day akitoka anasema, yesterday I went left, lakini sikufika mahali. Wacha leo nijaribu right. Anazurura, anaenda, anachoka anarudi. Kesho yake anasema, juzi nilienda left, jana nikienda right sikufika, leo acha niendelee mbele nione. Anapasua. He goes, anachoka, anarudi. So he keeps trying different directions, hoping that one day atafika Rwanda. My question to you is, what are the chances of him reaching the destiny? Please let me know. Put it in percentage form on the chart, please. So we say he doesn't know where he's going, or he knows where he's going, but does not know how. What percentage do you think is going to take for him to reach? 20%. Thanks, Robert. Anyone else? Number two will eventually reach the destination. Japhet, how? Okay. Mary, 5%. He's not focused. Thank you. You can start seeing how the numbers are playing around. Anyone else? 0% Gilbert. Thank you. Okay, great. So let me explain this to you. Robert, 20% is quite on the higher side because you can be walking on the right-hand side and Rwanda is on the right-hand side. Lakini ufike katikati usikie umechoka kabla ufike Rwanda. And then he comes back home. So he's already said this route will never get me where I'm going. So he'll never try that route again. So it means all other routes are not going to get him to. So the chances, if you look at it at the most, is about 5%. Okay? So that's the description of who number two is. Okay? Thank you, Faith. I like that. 10% lack of focus. So we're saying we give it at maximum 5 to 10% ataweza kufika. Okay? So here we are saying it's 0%. And here we are saying 5% to 10%. Brilliant. Now let's come to neighbor number three. So neighbor number three, this guy knows, okay, where he wants to go, okay? And number two, before he leaves the house, kabla atoke kwa nyumba yake, he takes a piece of paper and pen and he writes down the different ways of how he can get to that destination. He does his research. Anaona, naweza chukua ndege, naweza chukua maybe SGR, naweza chukua basi, naweza chukua matatu, naweza chukua motorbike, nduthi, I can cycle, I can walk, I can crawl. He comes with all these lists, writes them down properly. Then once he finishes that, he looks at his circumstances right now. Anaangalia mifuko yake inakaaje. And the moment he realizes this is what I have, he goes back to the list and says, based on what I have, this will be ideal for me. Only at that particular time is when he walks out of the house. So we say he knows how to get, not just knows how to get there, but also plans. So the question to you, all of you, is this, again on the chart. What is the probability, what is the chance that neighbor number three is going to arrive to the destination of his choice in terms of percentage? Let's listen to this. Let's read this. 100%, Mary. Thank you. You will reach the destination well planned and focused. Anyone else? 100%. Thank you. 99%. Aha. So I think here we're really in agreement. Huh? So we are saying here the list I've seen there is about 98% to 100%. Okay. So I want us to really look at these three. Okay. And I want us to pay attention properly to these three. 1, 2, and 3. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are all creators. And we are responsible for what we go through our thoughts. Okay? Now, each one of us has one of these characteristics. Each one of us has one of these characteristics. I want to ask you a question, and I want you to be as faithful as you can to yourself, because you're doing this thing for yourself. Okay? Now, the question is very simple. In the next 5 years, how much will you be worth? If you're thinking about that answer, then you're not here. Jitoe hapo kabisa. And the reason for that is because if you had the answer as to where you're supposed to be in 5 years, you're not supposed to be thinking. But if you found yourself thinking, jitoe hapa kabisa, 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 it means you're in one of these two. We're talking about personal finance. So where are you today? Where do you plan to be in 5 years? Where do you plan to be in 10 years? If you have not set that idea where you want to be, and you are responsible for creating your own life through your thoughts, who is supposed to think that for you? The fact that you're not thinking about it, then how will you create it? Are we together? Now you can see most people are actually here. And then they wonder why they struggle financially. Ask anybody, where do you see yourself in the next 1 year? Very few people will tell you where they'll be. Very few. You hear someone tell you, I'll be wealthy, I'll be rich. What is rich? That's a very general term, but what is rich? Your mind is a tool for creation. When you tell it rich, what do you mean rich? What do you mean wealthy? There's someone, if I give 100,000 today, they've become wealth. To them, that's wealth. There's someone, if I give 1 billion shilling today, they won't be happy because they're so used to so much. So wealth, who defines wealth? What parameters do we use to define wealth? That has to come from you because you are living your life. You were born alone, you will exit alone. Entry alone, exit alone. In between these 2 points, what does that tell you about yourself? Should your life be dependent on other people who you found here and yet you'll exit alone, or should your life depend on you? Who defines your life? Is it someone else or you? So these parameters of you entered alone and you exit alone tells you in between these 2 points, it should always be about you and you alone. I'm not saying you don't listen to other people. I'm not saying you don't take advice. But anything that does not resonate with what you wish, stand up and say no. Because you're living your life, not other people. Now, the problem with our society is they've set these rules where we're all trying to live according to someone who lived I don't know how many years ago. Yet deep inside, you find yourself, you're not happy with how things are going. So when you get to understand this and you start living your life, things becomes very interesting. So we work so hard because you're following that path, conventional path you're told, nursery school, primary, high school, tertiary, fanya kazi. You can be doing all that, but your mindset is here number 1. At best, if you're an employee, you'll be at number 2. So I've asked you, where are you going? Where will you be in 5 years? If you cannot answer that question, people tell me I'll be working. That's not an answer in financial freedom terms. Financial freedom terms, we want to see how we're progressing on this year. I'm worth this amount of money. Next year, I'm worth this amount of money. Am I increasing or am I decreasing? Napanda ama nashuka? The next year, I'm targeting in 5 years, I'll do this, I'll do that. There's a difference between living and existing. A human being is supposed to live. A tree is supposed to exist. But most people exist, they don't live. When you live, you have a purpose. When you have a purpose, you have a vision, you have a goal of where you're going. There's something that drives you to wake up in the morning so that you achieve that. How many people wake up happy? People dread even coming out of their bed. Why? Lack of where you're going. You're just existing and you think now you're heading in the right direction. Look at this 5% to 10%. Then you complain why you're struggling financially. You have no plan, you have no focus, you have no vision of where you're going. And no one else can come from outside there to do that for you apart from you. So this is so important because it's going to introduce to us to a new concept, which I'm sure most of you are aware of. Okay? So let me bring something else from this. So wherever you are, please be truthful to yourself and ask yourself, of these three neighbors, mimi ni mgani? And there's no problem at number one. It's okay. Because you're answering the first question, who am I today? So the most important questions now comes after, which is, who do I choose to be? Which neighbor do I choose to be? If you choose to remain at one, fair enough. If you choose, say, in the next 5 years, I want to be neighbor number 2, then after 5 years, number 3, it's entirely up to you. This is what we're talking about, being in control of your life. Don't let the programs which were instilled in your subconscious mind continue controlling you. That's why most people are unhappy. They're not living their lives. They're living other people's life, but they don't know that. So allow me now to draw another quick one for illustration purpose to emphasize on this first part. So here we want to take a trip to Mombasa. And it's at night. I want to assume it's at night. And you have this car here with you. So let's assume that's a car there with you. It's at night. And there's this road that goes this way. All right? So let's assume M here is Mombasa. So when you think about those three neighbors, I have actually defined where I am heading. So I have started from the end. I know I am going to Mombasa. So that first question is already ticked. If we do not know where we are going, hii gari tungepeleka tu kila mahali. Inaisha mafuta, tunaongeza, tunazunguka tu. So the first thing is, where am I going? I'm going to Mombasa. Fair enough. We've answered the first question. So we are not neighbor number 1. We have moved to neighbor number 2. Okay? Now, I want you to imagine that this road from here where you are is so rough. So all these black spots you see here is a rough road. Potholes and you name it. Hii barabara hata haina taa. We don't have street lights, huh? And it's raining heavily. And then here, we have a road that is smooth and it's marked very well. Okay? Here, we have another road that is very smooth and marked very well. Eh? In fact, this one even has street lights, which are on. There you go. Okay? Now, remember, this road from Mombasa has no lights. It's full of potholes and it's raining so heavily and it's at night. So you get into this car. Now you have to move from here to Mombasa. So the first thing you do is what? Turn on the lights. Now you start your journey. Now, what happens if you get to this point? Someone explained to me on the chat. Ukifika hapa, gari ivunje shock or it spoils. What will you do? I want someone, just one person to just write whoever comes first, I'll read it. So you have started your journey, probably a number of kilometers away, it breaks down at this point. What will you do? I want to relate this example to how we live our lives. Then you're going to see the clear difference between existing and living. If you got here and the car broke down, someone has written down, end the journey. Gilbert, Marianne, end the journey. Go back home and restart the journey all over again. Get someone to bring you the parts of repairs. Interesting. Great. Let's start with Marianne. Say, if you end the journey there, utafika Mombasa? And the answer is no. Gilbert, I will go back. You have actually made some progress to Mombasa. Now you're going back. So you're going away from your destiny. Mnaona neighbor number 2 hapo? Your destiny is there. You've come up with a plan of how to get there. But something happens in the middle and you decide to go back. Okay? As a creator, Mary C. and Gilbert, how will you get to your destiny? If you've changed your mind from where you're heading to going back or to end the journey as a creator, that's the end of it. You will never ever get to Mombasa. And that's how most of us do. Okay, Mary, go back home and restart the journey again. If you come back home, how will you restart the journey when the car is broken here? How will you get back home? We really want to put this thing into practice so that you really get to see it properly. Robert Munyeri, get someone to bring you the parts for repairs. Thank you. Remember, I told you every experience, especially the painful ones, are what? These are your prayers being answered. I told you every experience, God is talking back to you based on what you prayed for. That's why I gave you that example of a butterfly and its journey as a cocoon. It just doesn't mop out. It starts by struggling, inatoa mkono ya kwanza, first leg, whatever they call it, ivo, inatoa hii. You get? The reason why it's doing that is because God has designed it that way so that it strengthens the legs of the arms and the wings itself to a point where it will be able to sustain itself ikitoka hapo. So ukikuja pale usaidie kukatakata kitu ndio itoke ipeperuke, itakufa hiyo kipepeo. Because you have interfered with the process that was designed by God to give it the power to be able to sustain itself in this environment. So when this car breaks down, God knows that your prayer is to get to Mombasa. The reason why it's breaking down there has to be a good reason why. So you don't give up. You don't go back. You ask yourself why. And the moment you look at why, utaingia sasa kwa gari ufungue bonnet, uone, hii ndio imeharibika. That's why Robert is telling you, Munyeri, call. Niletee hii na hii na hii mnipate mahali fulani. Akileta, you fix, then what happens? You continue the journey. That is how it works. But we live in a society that has programmed us to see just pain, not the other side of it. And that's why I told you, when you start understanding how these things work, you start blessing every experience. Because out of each one of them, there's good news hidden within. Good news that is going to propel you to the next level towards the goal or the prayer you have been praying for. But going back is giving up. So you'll always be in that cycle and you become a victim. You tell people, I work so hard, that's you person and wapi. You start getting frustrated. You don't realize you're in that cycle, just like neighbor number 2. Okay, so that was Robert. So anyone else? Okay, fine. No one else. So the whole point is you proceed on with your journey. Ukifika hapa, and you see, when you get down to this point, and then you see this road that is so smooth, utaachana naye kwenda Mombasa uingie smooth ama utafanya nini? How many of you are going to enter this new route that is smooth, haina potholes, especially when you remember the experience you had here? How many of you will enter here? If you enter here, you have diverted from your plan. And your plan was set very well for what you're supposed to do. You've diverted. Now, where am I going with this? I am going with this because a lot of people do not realize they're not in control of their lives. So they set certain things they want to achieve. And then as they're proceeding on towards that goal, someone comes in, talks to them, and they divert. They change their mind. They keep changing their mind. That's how it is to so most people. And they wonder why they never reach their destiny. You've been walking so well, things are going on so fine. Someone comes and convinces you to do something different. Unachana ile yote kabisa, unaingia huko because this seems to be easier, shortcut. You saw what happened in these things of Bitcoins. Trading, Forex trading. Someone has been working for 15 years, anakuja naanza anaonyeshwa kutrade. And for those of you who've done trading, there's something called demo trading. Demo trading, they give you a software, you try, you train yourself. They tell us it's real life, but it's not real life. Because the day you move from demo trading to the real account, things go south. Sasa unapiga hesabu unaona, wow, I can make money within 3 months. Unaachana na kazi, unachukua pesa yote unakuja unaweka hapo. The next thing you know, investment gone. It was a scam. There's no shortcut to life. There's no elevator to success. You'll have to take the staircases one at a time. Mpaka ufike mahali ulifika. God was not stupid creating plants from a seed, which take time to grow. God was not stupid creating us to be born as babies who are helpless. We have to be supported at all points, even our heads could not move. And he gave us that process of crawling, starting to hold ourselves on chairs and things like those ones and walking, and now we can run around. If you observe nature, it speaks to you, it answers so many questions. Then someone comes and tells you you can be a millionaire in 2 days. The only way to do that is through crook ways, and those crook ways will always come back to you. That's a fact. So as a creator, when you're praying for something, understand the process is the same as you see nature. Don't let someone divert you in these shortcuts. Utapoteza pesa yako eventually. You're going to cry. If not now, in the future, you're going to do that. And I'm sure all of you can attest to that. So don't let people influence you. And I'm not saying you don't listen to them. Of course, listen to them. Go do your analysis. Think through it. Is this thing going to help me reach the destiny I want to? Is it going to divert me from what I wanted to do? What are the pros and cons of me taking this? Of course, this road seems smooth, but what if it's going the opposite of Mombasa? What will happen? Where will I end up? That is how you approach not just life, but your personal finance as well. How many of you have set up ideas of what you want, where you want to be by the end of this year? All those years you've worked, when have you ever sat down and said, by the end of this year, I need to be here? Most people just exist. Inafika, hey, 1 year, na imeisha haraka. We, nazeka. Next year, the same thing. Trust me, you utajipata retirement ukiwa hivyo, with nothing. And all this is speaking to that research we did. I told you over 95% of those who retired, specifically those who had prime jobs, are relying on pensions and upkeep from their loved ones. Don't you think you're going to be any different if we do not change our ways? That's why I talked about knowledge. There are two ways we need to understand that there are two types of knowledge. There is the correct knowledge and the incorrect knowledge. And the issue that I have with this society of ours is it feeds us the incorrect knowledge, specifically around personal finance. And because it's something that has been taught throughout, we accept that to be the truth. Yet we can't even open our eyes to question how many of these things the teachers do we see in the practical world happening. So we are saying, let's proceed on with this journey. Hata kama tunavumilia, let's learn every portal nini natufunza. Ukifika pole mata, it's tempting. So if you are neighbor number 2, now you do not have a plan of where you're going to go, trust me, you utaingia hapa. Na ukikosa hapa, hapa lazima utaingia. And this is why very few people attain financial freedom. It has nothing to do with how smart you are, how educated you think you are, what profession you do. I mean, how many lecturers do we know who can speak fluent English but are always broke? So don't let anyone lie to you it's about education. No, it has everything to do with the programs which are inside here. And those programs, unfortunately, from when you're very young, we had no control of the people who are instilling in them. And that's why I said one of the things we need to do, you and I, is to ensure that our children do not fall victim of that again. We need to start introducing the subject of money to our children. You cannot tell me money is evil and it's a tool I need for life. That was just crafted to instill fear in people. I have seen money do a lot of good things in this world. Just because a few people decide to misuse money, that does not generalize money as something evil. It's the people who are evil. Okay? So we need to go in that direction. So we are saying this is something now I want to come to. Have you ever taken time to ask yourself, why do companies have something called a vision? Why? What's a vision? Anyone? What's a vision? Anyone? Why do companies have something called vision? We are now getting into the part where I'm now going to connect all the dots for you. Okay? So the idea is this. If you are standing here today, as a creator, remember that. And creation starts with a thought. Remember those steps, eh? And then words. So that's 1. And then 2, we have words. So the thought is, today you're standing here, wherever you are. When you think about where you want to go, like for this example, you said Mombasa, this is the end goal, which is Mombasa. So we say, as you're thinking about where you're heading, you have created a thought. So you have ignited the engine of creation. So that's the first step you're supposed to do. That's why we say neighbor number 3, hata kabla atoke kwa nyumba, there are 2 things that he does. Number 1, he thinks first, anataka kwenda wapi. Because every creation starts with a thought. So when you do not know where you're going, you cannot expect your God to be more clear than you. Because God's work is not to determine where you're heading. God's work is to help you get where you have chosen to be or to go. That's where your free will is. So it's for you to say where you want to go. The moment you say it, that's a prayer. And once you say it now, he comes to aid you get there. So neighbor number 1, kama hajui kula naenda, God atamsaidiaje? He's given you the free will. So he's just waiting for you to say. So when you don't say where you want to go, pia atasimama tu nyuma yako anangojea. And then you start complaining. Kuna watu wanapendelewa. No. It's because this knowledge is not given out there, because they don't want you to understand it, because it works in real world. So you start with the thought, where do you want to be? So anytime, that's why I told you, in 5 years uko wapi, kama haujui, then you can see the danger you're putting yourself into. I'm not saying you're supposed to define every part of your life, but at least in the next, when you're starting this thing in the next 1 year, please make sure that it's very clear where you're heading. Because we are starting, we don't start something big. And that's why even that product we're going to create is going to reflect this. We'll give ourselves 1 year. By 1 year, all of us must have a cash flowing asset. Whichever asset you're going to choose, it's up to you. But all of us who are attending these classes, that's going to be our goal. So we're starting with the end. And the end has to be very clear. Ninini. Don't say wealth, say $1 million shilling. I'll have a cash flowing asset worth $1 million shilling. You're being very specific. This is what I want, because the more specific you are in the mind, it becomes very clear to it what you're trying to create. When you generalize it, you're confusing this tool or this power you're given. So the more specific you are, the clearer it is in your mind. And it becomes very difficult for someone to sway you, just like we saw in that road that goes to Mombasa. Hata mtu akuja jaribu kuambia nini, tuambia hapana, hapa ndo naenda. That gives you focus. So a lot of people do not have focus because they do not know where they're heading. They have no visions, they have no goals. That is why companies come up with the name vision. So vision is where do we want to be? Okay, thank you, Gilbert, for that. So we are saying vision is your end result, the destiny of where you're going. It always starts with the end. Because once you understand where the end is, as a creator, you have instructed this tool you're given by God, mahali ndo naenda. And so from now going forward, anything that I do has to be aligned by that. Excuse me. It has to be aligned by that vision of where I'm going. Everything else in between is aligned with that destination. Sasa mtu akuja kujaribu kuambia tuende Kisumu, utamwambia no thank you. I'm very clear where I'm going. But if you do not know where you're going, utaanza kwenda Kisumu, ufike bali kama Kisii, wakwambie kata hivi twende. You'll just be moving around and you're aging. That's how people do in employment and businesses. And they keep complaining we can't seem to be making any progress. So companies create a vision to guide them. That is where we want to go. How many of you are doing some businesses that have a destination or a vision of where you're going? Even if you're running a kiosk. Hata kama unauza smoky hapo nje, do you have a vision? And you'll realize, no. The interesting thing is even these big corporate companies, they just put a vision because it's others do it. I see this thing in corporate world when I go to do the part of consulting side I do for risk management. They just come up with vision for the sake of it. They don't even internalize to realize what it means. By the time being I'm through with them, they always change their vision completely. So Mombasa is where we're heading now. We say you start thinking from the end and then you work backwards. That is the secret. You work backwards to where you are. So what do? You start breaking them into timelines. So like now we are saying, if it's something in 5 years, you say, I want to be worth something, let's say 10 million. Na unaisema, hata kauna, you're a creator because your mind cannot distinguish something physical and something which you are imagining. Haijui? Its function is just to attract whatever is stored inside. So for me, you can start breaking down and say, here I'll have, let's say 8 million. Here I'll probably have 5 million. Here I'll probably have 3 million. Here I'll have 1 million. Here I'll have 500K. Okay. So this is 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, blah, 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 like that. Then you come to this 1 year and say, okay, I have a vision. The vision is highlighted here in red. And I have broken it down to a way which I feel this, I can achieve this. Now let me focus with this first year. In the next 1 year, I need to raise 500K, because if I manage to reach there, I'm on track to reaching my destiny, which I have created for myself. So you come and break this 1 year again into months. So 11th month, I'll make this, blah, blah. You find yourself now, you're going to say, maybe the first 1 month, I need to have 50K. So you know, between now and April 20th, I should be having cash flowing asset worth 50,000. Why? Because that 50,000 is connected to the next month, the other month is connected to the other, and at the end of the year, I'll have 500K, and in 5 years, I'll be at 10. But remember, the secret is to start from the end, working backwards. Now, what most of us do is we work going forward. And as we're walking going forward, we have no visibility of where we're heading. So even as creators, we're not even clear of where we're going. If we are not clear as to, how do you expect God to be more clearer than you? So you're doing yourself a favor by being very clear, because now He does what He does best. Push you to that point quickly. And once this becomes so clear, this now we're talking about the third thing. You've realized the way of getting there. Now, once, number one, destination, Mombasa or 10 million. I have come up with a plan of how I'm going to get there. You have broken it down into all these steps. Now you're ready to come out of your house. Neighbor number 3. So when you come out, now you're starting to take the steps which you came up with. So at the end of the first month, if you make, let's say, 40,000, and your expectation was this 50,000, it means you're behind with 10,000. And this is when I'm talking about experience. Stop complaining. There's something God is sending that to you to teach you something that you need for you to reach this 10 million you're looking for here. So you ask yourself here, when you get this 40, kwani ni wapi niliblanda? Where did I go wrong? Why didn't I hit this 50? Everything was so clear. Are there any lessons I can pick? And the more you look inside, you'll start realizing them. And you note them down, and you tell yourself, I'm not going to make this mistake in the next month. That's how you keep doing it, over and over and over. Okay? So as you do that, we are going to introduce what we call acronym called SMART goals. So basically, the topic I've been teaching you with these neighbors is called goals and goal setting. Not the way they teach you outside there. This is a very powerful topic when it comes to anything in life that you wish for, not just money, but anything. Why? Because most of people who teach outside there and do not know the psychology aspect of the mind, neither can they connect that to religion to show who we are as creators. So it is linked to you being a creator, and whoever came up with this, I really give him props up, because he managed to narrow this thing down of how we can be able to measure how we are progressing in a very simple way. Okay, so I'm going to use the slides. So we have gone through these 3 neighbors, and the question here was, who will arrive at the intended destiny and why? We looked at that one and we realized. So just because you work in a big office, you get you get paid a lot of money, or whether you don't even work, it does not matter. The idea is, which of these 3 neighbors do you replicate? Which of these 3 are you? If you're 1 and 2, remember those percentage you looked at. It will be very difficult for you to reach where you wish to be. And the reason for that is because you've made the simple mistakes. So we want again to reshape ourselves to move to neighbor number 3. Just like we say, in terms of wealth or financial freedom, we need to ensure that the only programs which are running in our subconscious mind are cash flowing program 3. So now we're coming back again to this and we're saying, for us to reach the destination, now we're looking at ways of how we can get there. We need to move from neighbor number 1, 2, and we need to ensure that we act as neighbor number 3. So those are the takeaways we are picking out, okay? From there, we looked at traveling to Mombasa. So a simple example here is about the student who dreams of becoming an engineer. Again, we say you start from the end. So this child wants to be an engineer. So visualize yourself being that engineer and then work yourself backwards. So he starts with engineer. He comes back and says, before I become an engineer, I need to get work experience. Before I get the work experience, I need to pass the engineering tests. And before I pass these ones, I need to practice problem solving so that I'm able to sit for that exam. But for me to actually practice problem solving, I need to be good in maths. So when you work backwards, you're basically creating a ladder that clearly shows you kule unaenda. And once you draw that line, that plan for you of that end goal, and you make it this way, no one will ever divert you. The reason a lot of people get lost in the middle of the way is because they do not know where they're heading. So we remember the example we gave of Mombasa. Marian C told us that's the end of the journey. Kwa hivyo akianguka hesabu hapa kwisha. Na ukianguka hesabu, when you tell yourself kwisha, you've told your mind you can't. Your mind will just say, sawa. Your mind doesn't know what is good and bad. It doesn't know what it's easy, what it's hard. It's what you convince yourself. It's what you tell yourself. Mandela told us it always seems impossible until it's done. So Elwin told us what? No man is limited. So be very careful. This world can control you in ways you can't even imagine. And you end up exiting this world without having realized your potential, just because you're conditioned to be scared, not to try, not to attempt. So we need to move out of that. So this example I just gave, a quick one, should relate to what I talked about before. Now, when you're coming to goals and goal setting, this I'm just going to go through it quickly on top, is that you need to understand that the end goal are the long terms. Upper katikati, middle, short terms. So depending on what you want for yourself, you can break these goals into long term, middle term, and short term. Hata ukisema hii 1 year, tunasema all of us must attain a cash flowing asset in 1 year, then the long term becomes 1 year. Mid term becomes 6 months. Short term, the next 3 months. So as we're picking from the end, working backwards, we make it very clear. And then now our focus becomes the first 3 months. Tuna focus na hapo kabisa, short term. Tusukume hapa kabisa, we get it right. Once we get there, now we enter the middle one. That is why companies, including our institution, Telepost, they have a vision, that is the long term where they're heading. And then you hear them speaking about strategic planning. Every 5 years, they go for strategic planning. What is that strategic planning? They are trying to see, are we in line? Tuko ile barabara ya kufika Mombasa, ama katikati tulienda mali tukajipata tumeingia barabara, sasa hata tumesahau kule tulikuwa tunaenda. That's what strategic planning is all about. And then once they come up with that, they break it down into what they can action in the office. So what the action in the office become now the short-term things they need to do. So again, even if you're operating a small kiosk or anything, please start practicing this thing, because the mind does not know a big company or a small company. It helps, it guides you. Ukianza hiyo biashara ndogo ya smoky, ukianza fuga kuku mbili, Usifuge tu for the sake of it. Have a number you're looking at 1 year. I must reach 15. Then 15 kuja ukizivunja mpaka hizo mbili pale unaanza. So kama umesema next month tuongeza mbili, if you don't have those two, again you have to question yourself, where did I go wrong? How come I don't have 4? But if you have not set that goal of 15, next month ikikuja na uko na mbili peke yake utaridhika. And these are not things you're going to be taught anywhere. These are very golden opportunity for you. These things are doing wonders, not just to me, even my children. I just sit back and watch things they do, and I just bless. I really thank God I discovered this. And that's why you realize I do it with a lot of passion, because I want to empower as many people as possible to realize this truth. Because the moment all of us get to understand this thing, the world will become a better place for all of us. Okay? So understand this part now. Connect all those dots in terms of goals and goal setting. Then come back to what I taught you about being creator. Hizi zimeingiana hivi. So goals are your thoughts. The clearer you are, the better for you. The easier you're going to get there. Okay? So the acronym, I come back to this, which is the same thing. Do you remember who you are? You are a creator. Thought. So thought and goal is the same thing. And all this occur in the mind. This is the vision of company. So even you have a vision, at least when you're starting to learn this thing, for the next 1 year, be very clear what you want. Don't go for 5 years. Start with 1. But if you understand these things through other ways, you can extend. But for most who I know, I do not know, let's focus with the first year. And the whole idea is to reprogram your mind, because you can start seeing there's a lot of things you need to move around your mind to get it to be in the right path. So the first 1 year, it's like reprogramming. We want to override that wrong program that exists in you, that tuweke mpya. So as we are riding together, all of us, ukisikia umechoka sana, tunakuinua, tunaenda na wewe, ukipata nguvu na eneo mwingine hivyo. In 1 year, all of us are going to have testimonials, and you'll realize the impact and the power of these things I'm teaching you. From then, ikiwachilia mtakuwa sawa, because you've seen it practically working. If you choose to proceed on mkiwa wenyewe, fair enough. But this is the truth. That's why we're saying the art and power of thinking from the end. Neighbor number 3, not 1 or 2. Okay, great. So here is the acronym I was mentioning. SMART goals. So SMART is an acronym that helps us define that goal which we want in a very clear manner, such that the mind automatically just goes to work to bring it to us. Because we've instructed it as creators, this is what we want. So SMART goals, S stands for specific. I've gone through this again. Don't say I want to be wealthy. Wealth is not specific. What is wealth to you? So when it comes to wealth, it makes sense to put a number, because you cannot confuse a number. When you say $1 billion, it's very clear. C2, C3, C10, 1B. The more specific you are, the mind is very clear. Now, when you say $1 billion, is it Kenya shillings or Zimbabwe dollars or US dollars? The more specific you are, the mind is very clear. This is what this creator has instructed me to bring, to create for him. Okay? So we're saying, what do you want? The art of thinking from the end. That's why you can see that neighbor number 1, hajui kula naenda, atazunguka tu, and all of you have given me those percentages. So if you are part of that, you can understand why you never achieve anything. The shida ikuwa wewe, shida ikuwa masomo yako, shida is you are missing the right knowledge to direct you in the right path. So S stands for specific. M stands for measurable. How do we measure this? We come back to this drawing. When you break it down from the end, when you start breaking them into these parts, they become measurable. So like we know in the first 1 month, we are supposed to make 50,000 Kenya shillings. Here we made 40. So we measured. We realized we are short with 10,000. But if we had no way of measuring what we are doing, hata hii 40,000 labda tungechukua 20 turudishie mwili pole, tukisema nimefanya kazi sana, and then you put 20. That's why a lot of employees pesa inapoteaga tu hivyo, na juu kule inaenda. It is not attached to anything huko mbele. By the time they come to say tatengeneza nyumba, ni deni tu wanalipa. Na hata hiyo nyumba wanasema they have not actioned exactly what I've told, because once you action that and you link it to your salary or the income you get into, hautacheza na hiyo pesa. Naturally hautaiguza kabisa hata kidogo. It will naturally be going to what you're saying. And this is what I like about how God has created us. When you do this thing, na umesema utasave 20, upate 20, badala ya kuweka pale unasema utaweka uende utumie kwingine, that voice uko ndani itakwenda kukumbusha, inakwambia we Kathy, Rebecca, umeenda kununua viatu na ulikuwa uweke ya shamba. You'll start feeling guilty naturally, because as a creator you came up with a very clear plan, and that plan got you excited. Now you've got the first money and you're taking it somewhere else. Wewe ni ule unaenda unapatana ile barabara imeenda hivi, iko na mataa mingi meaka, unachana na Mombasa unaenda hivi. The second time you get money, you do the same thing. That guilt voice will start shouting at you. What are you doing? I thought you wanted this. And eventually your guilt as a kuuma. You're just finding yourself coming back to start saving. So when you're saving, you're not saving because of saving. I told you, when you focus on the end goal of a cash flowing asset, savings becomes natural. So the focus should not be on saving. It should be 100% on the cash flowing asset, because you want to be very specific. That's what you want to hold into your mind at all time, not savings. And you're going to see this. You're going to testify in 1 year's time. That one I guarantee you. Okay? So M goes for measurable. You're finding ways of how you can measure the progress towards the goal you chose for yourself. Now, as you're proceeding on, pole pole, tuliona first month tulipata 40 badala ya 50. Maybe second month tulikuwa tumeka 70 tukapata 80. Third month tukasema 120 tukapata 40. So as you're proceeding on, I told you the feedback coming in is God speaking to you. Stop complaining. Look inside and find out ni nini unafunzwa. In this context, this acronym is telling us, is it achievable? Nimesema nitafanya kitu na mwezi na mwaka moja. Nikiangalia hizi 3 months kila saa na hata na 50 and I'm doing everything right. Then the feedback is so simple. This is not achievable at this particular point. The other thing is, I'm not being realistic. That is the next one. So the feedback coming from God is, you're still not ready to reach the goal you want within that time you have given yourself. So kama ulikuwa umeweka 10 million, shukisha maybe to 7.5 based on what has been happening. But that does not mean you're going to stick there. So if you drop it down to 7.5, again, you have to rework all these numbers coming back. Ikuja sasa ifike mahali feel uko comfortable. Now, as you continue practicing, you will start becoming an expert. Sasa kama ulikuwa umesema unataka 70, unapata 90. Ulikuwa unataka 80, unapata 100. Ulikuwa unataka 100, unapata 150. So realize now you're going above the bar. Again, so this is achievable, good. But am I being realistic? No. I think I can do better. So instead of 7.5, wacha sasa nisukume nipeleke 15. That is it. It's as simple as that. And everything is going to work out. So please take note of this acronym, SMART. Very, very important. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and it is time-bound. Okay? So now, on the last part, there are these five questions, or W's, that are like telling people that can guide you. So whenever you're thinking about whether it's finances or anything, learn to always ask yourself these 5 questions. Who is involved in this goal? For those of you who come up with great ideas and you want to start a business, you go pick a relative because the relative unataka kumsaidia. Is that the right person really? You think just because you share blood, that's the right person? By the time when you realize how the world works, hiyo biashara itakuwa imeanguka. I'm not saying you don't help your relatives, but most relatives will fail you. So this question is asking, who is involved in this goal? It's me, yes. Who am I bringing on board? Who is my partner? If I am good in finances, why should I bring another partner who's good in finances? I need to bring someone who can, accomplish me in something else, complement me on something else. Maybe I'm weak in marketing, so I need to think of bringing someone good in marketing. Yauze, mini deal na finances. Okay, so who is involved? Number two, what do I want to accomplish? And you're going to see these things practically when you start now talking about investments. Kenyans have this habit. These economic times are very tough. Where can I invest my money? I don't answer such questions. I tell people, go study. Go invest in yourself. I always tell them, go invest in yourself. And what do you mean? Go invest in yourself. What do you mean? Go study. You're a guru in this thing and you're refusing to tell me, I do not know you. I don't know what your accomplishment is. What do you want to achieve in life? When you tell me to advise you, do I know what you want? Why don't you go study these things, then make a decision? And it's so simple. It's because we've not been brought up to understand the power of starting from the end. I do not know whether you want to invest for your children education. I do not know whether you want to invest for your future retirement. I do not know whether you're investing because you want to go for a trip in 6 months. You are the one who knows these things. So you cannot expect me to have a clear-cut place of where to put your money into. So there are certain questions I'll need to ask you to get to understand you very well and what you're trying to do for me to direct you in the right path. But we behave like any investments will do. Someone who wishes to go for a trip in 6 months cannot invest in the same place with someone who's investing for retirement. The one who's going for 6 months has to look for very risky investment with high returns. Ule invest your retirement, he can go now to those who give small returns but steady and they're not risky. So all of us are wired or created differently. So I can't just come and tell you this. I need to understand certain things about you, and that's going to take time through the questions I'm going to ask you. So when they say, what do I want to accomplish? Again, what is the end goal that you're looking for? Don't just invest for the sake of it. Why are you investing? You ask that question to a lot of people, they tell you, for better future. What is better future? What kind of an answer is that? What is better future? You press them on the ukuta, wanashindwa kujibu. But someone who's very specific atawambia, I want to retire at 50 and I want to build a house exactly at that time. That's someone who's very specific. So the accomplishment is building a house. You get? Then 3, where is this goal to be achieved? Do you want to do it in the US? Do you want to do it in Nairobi? Do you want to do it in Kisii? Where? Number 4, when do I want to achieve this goal? By when? Time comes in. And then number 5, why do I want to achieve this goal? What's the main reason why I'm doing it? So these 5 questions helps you a lot. And again, you can see me emphasizing the power of experience, the third way of how God communicates to us. The first one I said is through feelings, 2 was thoughts, 3 was experience, 4 was words. This comes in handy. I hope now you can start seeing how all these things fit together. So on my last slide, then I can take up any questions you might have. We're going to go through this the next time. I just want to introduce this. Again, by the end of this month, we are launching an app that is going to integrate parents and children together to create a practical, simulated real life for children to start learning this concept. I have used psychology to design this app such that it starts programming our children to actually have the cash flowing asset program. Not the first 2, but the third one. So for those of you who might be interested in this one's Kids About to Close, you can actually register through that link you can see there. I know there's also the form for the training I'll be conducting for your children for free the moment they close school. So we're just about to wind up on that. I'm sure by the end of this week, you're going to get the details. I'll also ask Madam Alice to update you on where they are based on that one. So thank you so much for today's time. I'm open to any questions you might have. I really appreciate. Thank you so much. Over to you, Madam Alice.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Andrew, for that wonderful presentation. I think our members, if we have been setting goals every first or every January, we always make plans and we tell ourselves that we are going to achieve our goals. So today, I think the implementation part has been explained clearly to us, and I think huu ndio mwaka wa kufanikiwa. So we better take action, because that is what is very important to us. We can always write, we can always speak, but action speaks louder than words. So thank you so much, Mr. Andrew, for that. Kindly, I just want to invite questions. We can write or we can just unmute and ask. Even as we prepare, just want to also add that we've sent a link on our children's training coming up in April during the holidays. It is scheduled to be on 13th of April. We'll be able to communicate the exact time. All we are asking is that kindly register your children ready for the training. Usiachwe nyuma. So let's change the minds of our children while they are still young. So isikuwe late. And also, as always, Mr. Andrew has always told us that it's never late for all of us to start again. I'm seeing someone, the training is very powerful and encouraging. We really appreciate you, Collins, for that. Thank you for your comment. Is the training physical or online? I'm hoping you mean the children, it's online. The training for the children will be online. So kindly register. It will be on a Saturday. So I hope all parents will be at home to give their kids, if it's a phone to use, it will be online. Kindly, we can unmute also to ask. Anyone? Before we conclude. I hope Mary is answered. I can see John saying, what do you do when you have a goal and a plan and you're working towards it, yet there are folks who you take care of, hence making your journey longer? Kindly, Andrew, you've seen that?
Yes, I have. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Simply put, remember you're the creator. And as a creator, you're the one who's going to determine whether you want to be slowed or whether you want to work fast. At times, I believe sometimes you have to sacrifice for yourself first, because I believe you cannot give that which you do not have. When we think about creation, we have this tendency of looking at things from a physical point of view only. But the same logic we use on the physical side also applies on the non-physical side. So for instance, if John, you asked me to give you 10,000 now, and I don't have it, as much as I want to give you, I can't give it to you because I don't have it. Okay? What that tells you is you cannot give something that you do not have. So the same way, I understand there are a lot of people, especially firstborns. You know, once your parents struggle with you, then the moment you just get your first employment, all your siblings umeachiwa. How can you give them nawe mwenyewe hauna? So the secret to this, John, is at sometimes you just say, I don't have enough. Not that tutaki kuwapatia, but you sacrifice some, unaweka kando, unaanza kutengeneza cash flowing asset. Hata kama utanyamazia peke yako, let that be. You know the long-term goal is. The long-term goal is to uplift everyone or those who are dragging you behind it. So, if someone is not going to follow on the path you're saying, like I said, you are born alone, you die alone. In between, it should be about you. I have seen a lot of people waste their years because of trying to please everyone. I understand there's that component of feeling that responsibility, but when you empower yourself more, then you're able to take care of them well. So the goal here, John, is you say, I am going to sacrifice these first 6 months, watch out waumie, but the money I'm going to set aside, I'm going to set up a fast cash flowing asset. Kama ni kuku utaweka nyumbani, you look for a market you can be, fungua. Make sure it's running properly. What that does is you have created 2 sources of income. So the first 6 months utachukiwa, but sasa ile pesa itaanza kuingia pale kwa kuku, you divide it into 2 again. Half sasa ianze kuwasaidia, hii half ingine ianze kusavia a second cash flowing asset, and now you have that first one still with you. That's why I keep saying it's all about cash flowing asset. Like for me, that's how I do it. Anything I think about that I need, that needs money, I think of a cash flowing asset. When I realize I'm expecting a baby, immediately I start thinking of something I can build. Hiyo itakuwa huyo mtoto. By the time ile anazaliwa, hiyo biashara ishainuka. Na hiyo ndio hivyo itakuwa namlipia school fees hivyo. Second born hivyo. I have parents at home who need me. I think of a cash flowing asset. Now, the problem with us is we rely on one thing to sort everything. Why? Because again, we are conditioned to be employees. And employees just one income, one pipe bringing you that income. So in the start off, we need to start figuring ways of how we can bring more pipes. So you start allocating one pipe to go here. Because you want to grow. That's how you go about it, John, from where I'm starting. Okay, Rose, what's the age bracket for the children? We're saying from the age of 5 all the way to 17. Over to you, Madam Alice.
Okay, thank you. I hope we are answered, Rosa and John. Anyone else? We still have 4 minutes. Okay, kindly let's always share the links to our friends and colleagues to join in so that they can learn. For those who just joined in today, we are on session 8 of our session. It's been from 1, and if you've not been, you can still find from session 1, you can find them on our YouTube page. Just go type Telepost Sacco, you'll find all the sessions there so that you can be able to catch up with the rest. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for our diaspora members, and also for being able to share to your friends. And also want to appreciate our directors who also joined in, and all the members. Thank you so much for your sacrifice. I know you're making a sacrifice, but not in vain, because you are also learning. Yeah, let me see, there is another. Oh yeah. Mary, good presentation as always. Thank you so much, Mary, for that. We appreciate. So I think we can be able to. There is another question there, Mr. Andrew.
So what is the tentative price?
The tentative price for the app.
Oh, okay, yeah. It will be
Yes.
subscription based. It will be going for about between 400 and 450 on a monthly basis, or you can subscribe for a month, which is going to cost about 4,200 for whole year. Sorry. Yeah. Over to you, madam.
Okay, thank you so much, Robert, for that. I hope you answered. I think now we are able to close. I just want to appreciate you more and also just wish you all the best and also wish you a good night. See you next time.